Hi, this is a demonstration of painting a simple apple blossom. The video was recorded back in COVID times when we had to do some learning from home. I've included in the description below a link for a reference image, a line drawing, a grid in case you want to draw it up yourself, so that you can either paint along with me now or paint later at your leisure. So let's get painting. This is how I go about starting every painting. I have my reference image, I have my colours sorted. If I've never painted the subject before, I will always do little colour swatches. So when you do your drawing on here, and you're going to be painting with yellows in particular, they don't cover up graphite. Well, the graphite will always show through the yellow, so I really don't like seeing the pencil lines on mine. So particularly if I'm going to be painting something light, I might put my drawing down, and then with my kneaded rubber, which comes in a little square, but you open it up, you can turn it into any shape you like. I sort of roll it into this little bit of a sausage shape, and I just quickly drag it over my drawing, so I end up lightening the pencil lines so that I really have only got barely what it is that I need to be able to get my drawing done and my painting done. But as I say, with florals, sometimes you don't even need any drawing. But had this been an animal and you had to get the nose and the eyes and whatever in the right place, you'd want to have some pencil marks to be able to do that. But I like to take off any excess graphite. So I'm ready, drawing's done, colours are chosen. Just a case of getting on with it now. So I'm going to show you how to paint a wet into wet background that we will let dry, decide what further work it needs whilst we're working on our flower. Then we'll go back into the background and hopefully we'll get a painting that we love. So here goes. So with a soft brush, sable or your mop or your hake, I'm going to wet everywhere other than my flower. So I can wet over even the leaves, even if I've drawn leaves on here. I'm not going to put that part there. I'm putting water everywhere that is the background. Have some dry spots in there and the paint doesn't flow into that part. It also gives you interesting texture. So there we are, that's a fair bit of water I've put on there, but I'm ready now to start adding some paint. So I'm thinking about my background here. I think I'd like, because this is quite a bigger piece of paper, I'll have some green here, but I would like to see some shapes, little bits of colour up in the background that represents more blossom. I like to use reference images as my starting off point. It's to give me the right shape, to give me the idea. It was my inspiration to want to do the thing in the first place, but I like to make some things up. I need some things to be my choices, not just what's going on there. And that seems like a lot of buds. Now if I start adding greens right next to this, they will actually turn a bit of a grey colour because they're colour opposites, red and green, and I will end up with grey in the background, which a little bit of grey is fine, but I don't want too much grey. So what I'm going to do is add my yellow down closer to my pink. So it's sort of like a little barrier. Just drop the yellow in. This is the cool yellow I'm putting in here. Circling really around these pink shapes, so that by the time I add blue in here over the yellow, hopefully it's not all going to read grey. That's going to dry incredibly light because look, you can see I've put it on there pretty light. I can tip it around, and if I'm careful, it's still not going to go into the white petals of our blossom because I haven't added any water in that area. So hopefully it can't find its way in. There's plenty of water on here, so I'm just mixing up that pink and that yellow a little bit. Hopefully now, when I start adding some blue, let's still stick with this big brush because it's a bigger piece of paper. So here's my core blue, which I'm going to just let it touch with the yellows. Let's see if I can start getting green. Now when I do this, if I don't get enough green from it, all I have to do is strengthen up with a bit of yellow. Oh, that's bright. Now if it comes out bright, I can dull it down afterwards, but if I get it a bit dull in the first place, there's nothing I can do to brighten it. I haven't even looked at my reference image for a bit here, but I'm just looking at what's happening here with my watermarks already on here. See if I can quickly get this down while it's still wet with greens. To make my background. And it doesn't need to be totally finished. This is what we call the first pass. This is getting rid of the white of the paper, soft muted colours that when dry are going to be even lighter and possibly much, much too light. But I feel that if they're light, I can work with them. If I've put this first lot down very dark, I'm really stuck with that and have left myself not a lot of option. So there we are, a lot of wetting to wet. I wet the paper first. Only dry shapes is the white blossom and that white and that bud here. So they've been left dry. So I'm now going to have to let this background dry because there is a lot of water on here and I would find it pretty difficult to start working over the top here while this is so wet. I love the little marks that I'm getting down here. I really could do with a few more of those. So possibly just while it's looking still wet enough, while it's still wet, there's a lot of water there, you can safely add more paint. But if it was at all drying, you've got to wait. If you see something that you like on the paper that's happening, find a way of repeating it. Let's get a little bit in up here. There we are. So, first washes, wet into wet. Time to let that dry, see what sort of marks we've got, how light our washes are dry and what we have to do next. My first washes of colour have dried. When you do wet into wet like this and they're lovely soft backgrounds, it's really, really nice if you can actually let them dry naturally. The whole time something is wet and it's got pigment on there and it's finding its own way around with whatever water's left on the piece of paper and mingling with other colours, it's still worth it. I've dried mine with the hairdryer, but I'm quite happy with how it's looking. It's very, very soft. I'm now going to work on the centre, well, the centre of my painting, the centre of the flower, my petals here. Then I'm going to decide how busy do I want to make my background. If I do my background really busy now, I'll get bogged down in doing that and won't be doing this little piece of blossom here. So I'm going to have a go at doing this now. So I won't be using that great big brush because that's just going to be too big to do the job. I probably could have changed my water there, but I've got one pot that's clean and one that's okay for rinsing the brushes. So using the same process that we used when we did our grayscale, we really just want to be able to get colour on these white petals because, you know, they're white, but they've got shadow. And now we're seeing the blossom in colour. We can see that the edges, some of the edges of the petals have got the pretty pink on there. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to start off, same process we did with the grayscale, going round petals. If I can work from one, jump over to another, I will. Put my strokes down, soften them, and so forth. So if I just clean off that little bit of green that's on here, because whilst I might want a little bit in for that bit in there, I don't maybe want it on all of the petals. But in saying that, I've got to get a bit of a shadow colour, so maybe that would have been better to have left it there. So to make your shadow colour for your white, it's going to work best if it's made up of the colours that you're already using in the painting. So I know I've used my cool blue, I've used my pretty pink, and I've used my cool lemon. So I could have a quick little look to see, will I get a grey that I like out of that? So I just take a piece of paper, little bit of this, water, put a bit of the pink in. So that's going to be on the edges of the petal. If it had a little bit of the blue in with it, it's going to go purple, which is still quite a pretty shadow colour. I could have added the lemon to it as well. Which makes it very warm. And too dark for me. I think that's too dark. So I will go back to the first idea where I had the pink and just the tiniest little bit of the blue in there, which turned it purple. And if I use that in a very, very diluted way, here, might be hard for you to see, but if I use that in a very diluted way, I think I will get the colour I want for doing my shadows on my petals. So I will wet a petal, and I think I will start off with this big one at the top. It's got a little bit of a pink glow here, which is coming from the petal that's underneath. It has got the pink on it, and it's showing through the delicate edge of this petal. So just drop a bit of water in. Where it's going to be really, really white, when I look at the reference image here, where it's really, really white up there at the top, if I don't put any water there, my colour, my shadowy colours, or the veins, any bits that you see that are not pure white, it won't go there because you haven't invited it with a bit of water. So I'm just going to drop a little bit of the pink here. And a little bit I can see over here. Then I'm going to try and make that light grey colour. And drop a bit of that in. It's very, very subtle. Very, very subtle. Because we want to keep this very, very delicate and light. So here's this one that will be glowing from under there. This one's here. Now if you do your petals and you have a little more colour than what is in the reference photo, or in a slightly different spot from what's in the reference photo, this will make no difference in the long run, because no one's going to see the reference photo, so nobody even knows what this petal looked like. How did it unfold? How was it compared to the petal next to it. So I'll leave that one to dry. It's just a hint of pink, a little bit of shadow colour, and like we did with the grayscale, if any of the shadow colours as we go around is not dark enough, then we just put more on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on putting the same colour down there on the other white petals, and then I'll come back and we'll discuss about doing the centre. Then we'll do the bud, decide what we're going to do with all this background, and you can be doing yours. Well, I have now got some colour on all of the petals on our main flower, and I have a look at my reference image here. It's not exactly the same, but it's going to look fine by the time I put my centre of the flower in here, strengthen up a couple there, get my bud in here. I'm quite happy with how that first lot has dried. So when I say dried, I use the hairdryer on it. So I can carry on now. I'm going to show you how to do the centre here. Look and see if any needs strengthening up. Let's do the bud, and then we'll talk about how to finish the background with a lot or not a lot. So it just depends how we feel about how this bit here goes. So looking at the centre here, same as we did with the grayscale, it needs to be fairly dark in places here, and the dark on it now is, you can see because its colour is green, a dark green. So I look at the greens that are already in here to see if I can perhaps just use that same combination, but to get it a little bit darker, or do I have to introduce my other blue to get some variation, which I may well have to do, otherwise all of my green is just going to be from that cool blue and that cool yellow. So I have a look here and I think to myself, probably quite like, I think just introducing the other yellow, so sticking with one blue, the same blue, but adding the warm yellow to it, because it will lead up into those stamens, which are the warm yellow. And when I do this and I mix them, if I change my mind, so be it, I change my mind. So if I don't like what it is I'm mixing, I change it. So coming in here, just looking at the little shapes that are here, varying it a little bit, so places I've got a little blue. It's no good trying to do this bit wet into wet because it's just such a little tiny shape, and it would be too hard. So I'm just following around here where I can see it green and dark. Rinse off my brush. Now when I look here, we haven't used any way of retaining the white here for the stamens, so we have to paint in between them. So just to get the look of it, you just see which direction you want them to go up, and you're really painting either side of them. Either side of the stamens to give yourself these little stemmy bits. That will do for now. I'll let that dry before I decide if that needs to be darker, which it probably will be. But if I try putting it all in now, such a little area like that, I'm just going to get paint everywhere where I don't necessarily want it to go. I'll leave that bit to dry before we put the yellow on. Let's have a little look at this one here, this bigger bud. We can afford to go in this with a bit stronger, So I could wet it, but I think what I might do is put it down dry. So this bit is the stem here, so I'm going to come around the stem like so. Leave this part in the middle where it's opened up and the blossom is white. Put that down, shake, rinse my brush, shake it off, touch the pink paint that I've already put on here and see if I can get it to look a little bit textured and a little bit white in places. Just really having a look. It's just a pretty little pattern shape, all of its own here. So just using the paint that's there, make just little interesting veins, crisscrossy shapes, till you feel like you've got something you're happy with. Over this side, same sort of thing. Put the dark paint down, pull it around. Now able to get it dark, and we can always go in with a little bit of blue there after and darken that up, but by adding water we've been able to get it to different tones, different values in there with the one colour. And if I come in here, there's a wee bit of the colour, whoops, nice big blob of water gone on my, a little bit of pink. Just bring this down in here, because there's a wee bit of colour gone into the white there. I won't do any more on that, I'll let that bit dry. But that's how we're going to go about doing that. And he's got a couple of little leaves that hang off him, and of course the stem. So now I'll have a look and see, do I need to strengthen anything here? What are we going to do at the back here? Well, he's got quite a bit of colour on there, but he's going to stand out a lot better if we can put some darks behind. So I think this is the time to look at doing a couple of these leaves that are on there, so that we can add another dimension, the leaves behind, the blossom on the top. So I'll just move a little bit of that pink paint out the way to give me a bigger area now for mixing the greens. If you don't want to be forever wiping your palette up, then you know you can, when you've made your colour choices for just the painting that you're doing right now, you could just do them in separate little dishes and keep your yellows nice and fresh and separate. I'm quite used to getting it quite mucky looking on there and just finding the next little possible spot to fit a bit of paint in. So let's have a look at putting in this green leaf up here. So we'll dip into our yellows. I'll probably have a bit of the warm yellow and a bit of the cool yellow. I'll try and get a little bit of variety going here. Here's my blues. So I'm really looking to get a stronger colour here and here than the background colour. So dipping into bits of all of it really, and having a little look. I'm going to swap over to my Still my number 8 brush, but the one that actually holds the shape for a little point up here would be good. And the underside of this part of the leaf here is lighter. So we'll just put that down, add a little bit of water. And the other side of it is darker, which I've got to be really careful of now that I don't let it run entirely into the light part. So you could do it in 2 stages. Same sort of thing here now for the bigger one. Go back to this brush because I can get the paint down a wee bit quicker. Can't quite see a drawing here, but it's something like this. A bit more yellow coming into here. Quite irregular looking edge, jagged looking edge. The veins, you could leave the background of your first wash and then try to leave a little edge that could be a vein. Takes But this is how you would go about it if you do wish to have a little vein. See that? I've just painted either side of the background. The background colour is still there. And we better go down and connect it into the back here somewhere behind this petal. Oops, into there like so. This is the a little bit of a curled up part there. Come closer to this. There's just slightly bluer colour on this side of the central vein. Leave some little gaps if you really want to have veins going this way. See me moving around the palette, just picking up a bit of this yellow, a bit of that blue, a bit of the other yellow, just to keep it varied on here. It's already varied in the background because we let the paint mingle on the paper, so we already have got variety of our colour. So I've done 1, I've done 2. We really would like to do this dark one under here, but there's 2 here, and I might do this little one here first. Just a little bit of a it helps the white petals stand out. Like so. So I'm not necessarily colour matching here, I'm just colour matching with what's going on in my painting and with the colour choices I made from the very start. I'll just let that dry a minute before I do this really dark one under here. The stem I'll do when that's dry. I could put the yellow little bits on the stamens here. reassess that there. How much more real leaf do I want? One over this side. Let's do the one over here that we can see. Something behind up over here. Myself a little edge. Come in, mix up the colour a bit more. And let's try to vary it. Sometimes when you've got 2 colours or 3 colours in your palette here, which there were 2 yellows and 1 blue, and you mix them up, you see the brush dancing around at it, so there's more yellow in one spot and more blue in another. When you go to put it down and you release the paint, if you press on your brush different pressures as you're going around, it releases the paint in interesting marks, and sometimes puts more blue, sometimes more yellow, depending how it's picked up on your brush. So you have got to work with the background that's you've got going. How's your background? What does it require? You may not need lots of leaves. You might need lots of leaves. It's going to be how your first washes have come out. This determines how much or how little to put in. I'm quite happy with all of that. It looks pretty fresh, but I've got a lot of painting going on over here. If I was doing this painting and ultimately I finish something and I think, well, I've got too much, it doesn't really do anything, well, I could just chop my piece of paper off here and turn it into a smaller painting. But I want to show you perhaps how to do a few more things up in here, just to really cut away from the photo and do my own thing here and see what sort of thing that we can create. If I looked carefully in this painting, I can see we've got the stem, sorry, the branch going through here. It's all out of focus on here, but I can see it in the background there. I think I need to put some branch in here as well. This is where our burnt sienna will come into play, and possibly then you could use the burnt sienna in the leaves. It would work out really well for this dark one here. So if that was dry enough there, I could have a go at doing that. So let's try mixing up that burnt sienna and see what we get. So we go with the burnt sienna. And we mix it with a touch of that blue, that cool blue. And we'll just come down here. With a bit of a shape. Cutting in around the edge of this blossom's petal. Maybe giving a little hint of a vein up the middle there. Just use that same bit of dark whilst I've got it for the edge of here. It can be a little bit lighter in places here, maybe mixed in with a bit of other colour. After just trying to get a bit of dark in here. See that burnt sienna and that cool blue really make a very, very interesting dark green. Who would have thought? Right, so now we've put that dark one down. You can see it really makes the rest of the painting look a little bit wishy-washy. So we've certainly got to put some more darks in this. So I'm just going to dry this leaf off and come back, and I'm going to start dropping some more in the background, and you can just have a little look and see if I can turn it into something I'm happy with. The one dark leaf here is dry. It's got some lovely texture on it, which makes it look a little bit like veins and patterns on there, so I'm quite happy with that. But the whole thing is looking pretty wishy-washy, so I'm going to now strengthen up behind the whole thing, put the brown, some brown in there to make a branch stem. The areas that I can see there's more pink, I'd like them to look like there was more blossom in the background that we can't quite make out, so I might have to just paint a couple of shapes around there, and I think then we might call this one done. Let's put this yellow in here first, just so that we can envisage a finished looking flower here, and does it need much more colour. I've got some lovely green going in amongst my yellow here, which is something I do all the time. I end up getting pretty dirty looking yellows, but I'm just not careful enough. So with this, when it's time to paint these, they're just little blobs. Just little blobs. Some of them touch. And you could darken some of them up after, or try to put a little bit in now. So if I put that burnt sienna in there, there's a bit of a shadowy colour underneath. I just don't want it to make everything look a bit dirty. So I'll just be really careful with that. And I've dropped that in. If I come with that same warm yellow and just maybe just fill in a little bit of this white underneath here. Yeah, that will pass. This needs to be darker here, so I think we could take the burnt sienna mix that we used for this really dark leaf and just strengthen up. You might want to wait till your yellow is dry if you think that it will touch, because it does a bit. So you have to be really careful with that. So maybe I should have said let that dry, but anyway, I've done mine. So I see this petal here is too dark on there and looks the same shade as this bit under here. Just try softening that edge there with some water, and just with a clean tissue, see if I can just take out a wee bit of the shadowy colour that was there, and it is going to lift. So when you do it, you wash out your brush if you still need a bit more, put the clean water on, and with a clean part of the tissue, because you don't want to just put back in the bit that you took out, just lift that off there. Now if I go darker underneath there, that will definitely look light on the top, but we'll leave that alone for a minute because that's still very wet up in there. But this stem on this lovely bud down here could be painted, and if we paint that dark, if we paint it dark, it will stand out against this petal. Light against dark. A little bit of yellow in there. Rinse off the brush and just use the bit of paint that I've already put down. Just to fill in this little spot there. Could either be a tiny bit darker, but I may have to leave that because now that I've made some of it lighter, this part here that I would like dark, if I drop the dark a bit on it now, it will make that whole shape dark when I really only want it dark over there. So I do another little glaze when that's dry. This little leaf here that's supposed to be over the top of this one, I could achieve that by doing its edge. And just doing a little bit in the middle. Right, getting fussy too quickly here. There we go. We say let's save doing the fussy bits towards the end of your painting. I can see a bud here. There's a bud here. I have to decide where to put the stem. When you look at the reference photo here, there's a stem running through here. There's something going up the back here, and another thing down there. You put it somewhere where it's going to suit whatever marks has happened on yours. I quite like the idea of it coming up through here. Now I haven't got it drawn. If I was worried that I couldn't paint the shape that I want, I could just, even now, just give myself a little bit of a line to follow here, and where it comes up here, I'm not going to go straight across the page here, but I might bring that same twig branch out here and make him come up into the painting up there. Just do the one for now and see whether I like it. I've got pretty colours already underneath it, but being a branch, it's obviously going to have brown in it. So I've mixed up my burnt sienna, still touched a little bit of that cool blue in there because it does make a lovely greeny brown. And here I am putting a branch into our blossom painting. Paint down, soften parts of it, pick up a bit of the other colour, darker bit, up into here, rinse off the brush, just tickle around the little bit of paint that you've already got there. Does it need to be thoroughly mixed? No. Let's just let it do a few interesting little textury looking things. What a blob there, and carrying on with the same colours because it actually comes up over here. So I want to come out with the same shade. Bring it up over here. Into a bit more of the greeny brown that we mixed up here. Let it do a little bit of mixing on the paper. A bit bluer as we go to the top. Rinse out my brush. Tickle it around a little bit and see if is there enough colour there. Do I need to drop any more in? there's our first branch. So by having put the darks on there now, this is standing out a lot more than being too close to the colour of the background. So I think I'll just dry off this stem, and then I'm going to start dropping some colours in here just to strengthen up the background and see if I like it. And I think we're just about done, so I might put that on a little bit of speed painting so we get that bit done really fast, but I'll dry this off first. I've decided that I'm going to really consider this done now, because this is really what you're going to do from our reference image here, and anything else that I do extra here is just something for my own pleasure really. So but while I see pretty things happening on the paper here, I think, well, yes, I could try adding something. So what we'll do is we'll just finish this off now and call it done. That will be the project. Then I'll just put it on a bit of speed filming to show you perhaps how I might add a bit more into the background. So that's going to be the plan next. So here, just about finished with the centre here. But when I look at my petals going around here, so this is our evaluation stage. When I look around my petals going here, this one, for instance, doesn't look over the top of that one. And this is because the first layers have dried. And this is where you can see whether you needed some more. So mixing up that shadowy colour, which was a light purple. Really had to be very soft, and look, none of this is soft. This is how you end up with a lot of paint on your palette, just trying to match a colour that you had before. So I'm going to just try and go with something that's here. As soon as I go round and round and round, I know I did have a bit of yellow over here as well, but I think that graded up too much. But anyway, let's have a look. Yeah. Too warm. Right, there we are. I'll go with this. So I need this one here to be over the top of this one. So I've got to really put a little bit of strength here. Under the petal here. Rinse out my brush, dab it off, and just soften this line there. More water and let it meld away, because I don't want the paint to travel too far into this petal. But now that petal is at least over the top of here. This little one up the back here maybe just needs a wee bit of strengthening, just to say he's at the back. So it's only like a little triangle of pink up there. This one here is over the top of the one at the back. There should be a little curled over edge here, which isn't quite reading as it should there. But again, if I can't turn it into looking the same as the photo, won't matter. But I'll give it a shot at seeing if I can get the little curled over edge by darkening up the other side of it. So we've done that. A little bit of shadow under this one. Rinse my brush off, soften this edge of it. Looks a little bit too stripy. Just, if you put the paint down and you think, oh, it's looking a little bit too rigid, just add some water and tickle it around. So just working around. That one there has got to be over the top of this one. So find the edge of the one that's over the top. Put a little bit of shadow colour underneath and tickle it out. So now he's over that, he is over that, he is over that, and I wouldn't mind that being a little bit pinker there. And that is a little bit of white behind there. Oh, that will read white, so that's okay. It's got to still have a little bit of shadow in it. So a little bit of colour, probably that much. How are we going here? Maybe lost a little bit of light around there. I could lift that out. So this evaluation stage is where you've got time to look at a couple of bits and see if there's anything you can do that's going to help. We could see a little bit more of the veiny looking bits on here. It's looking very white, so here, whoa, maybe looking a bit too purple. Let's go a little bit bluer. There we go. And put that up on this edge that I can see here. Let him swim out a little bit. That looks quite pretty. And maybe darken up a couple of the creases and form of the and over here where you could see the pink from under that one, this then has got to be a little bit pinker on this side. Stand back and look. A little bit of darks on here. A little bit of vein coming through here. Strengthen in there. A little bit up there. If you don't get this much on yours, doesn't matter. This is the first one that you're doing. I just want to show you what could be achieved. But you only have to take it as far as you want to. Still only an afternoon's work. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to call him done. I'm going to put that one tiny bit of dark on the edge of this bud, the stem of the bud. Strengthen that up there. A bud, dark leaf, the green leaves, the stem. So I do hope you enjoy having a go at that, and do a quick little bit of speed painting for you and just see what I might add into the background, because after all I have a very big piece of paper.